Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to another segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day, the recitation, Asa Mahalla Panjwa, Ik Tuke, Jivat Disai, tis Sarapar Marana, Bua hove, tis neh chal rehna. जीवत मुए मुए से जीवे हर हर नाम अवखद मुख पाया गुर सबदी रस अमृत पीवे रहाओ काची मटकी बिनस बिनासा जिस छूटे त्रिकुटी तिस निज घर वासा ऊंचा चढ़े सुपवे प्याला तरण पड़े तिस लगे न काला प्रमत फिरे तिन किछ न पाया सो अस्थिर जिन गुर शब्द कमाया जियो पिंड सब हर का माल नानक गुर मिल भय निहाल जियो पिंड सब हर का माल नानक गुर मिले भय निहाल. The passage, a relatively short one, focuses on Jivat Muye Muye Se Jive, learning how to die while still alive. The central message of Gurbani. In other words, how does one transcend the ego? So the Rahao says, Jivat Muye Muye Se Jive. Jivat Muye. A living being is sure to die. Muye Se Jive. But if one learns to die to the ego while alive, it attains immortality. It's renewed. Rebirth, spiritual rebirth occurs. And how is that state to be achieved? Har har naam avkhad. Self-knowledge, naam, actualized as virtues, is that medicine, medicinal properties, or healing power, if you will, that which, if consumed, mukhpaya, gur sabdi ras amrit pive, that is the antidote to the ego. So drink the nectar of immortality through Gur wisdom. So Gur wisdom is the channel through which that nectar will reach you. So what this really means is, what does dying to the ego mean? It means to transform the ego so that the ego is no longer recognizable, you see. And so think of it as stretching the ego through Guru wisdom so that it transcends its own boundaries and spills into the self. In other words, it loses its identity and becomes identified with the self. Now, that is the way to go about it. Because the Guru says, Jivat Disai tis Sarapar Marana. To be physically alive, in other words, to be living in the ego, ensures that death will ensue. Sarapar Marana. Sarapar surely will happen. Assuredly will happen. So the ego will die. But they who learn to die to the ego while alive, again, a matter of transformation, they are the ones who attain to eternal life. This nehchal rehna, nehchal is steady, immovable, because the ego mind is constantly wavering. So in a manner of speaking, it is constantly dying and rebirthing, constantly. And this constant birthing and dying moment by moment, disables it from really focusing on its true identity. So when you learn to switch off this dying and birthing, the mind becomes steady, immovable, and in that state, it recognizes its true identity. It's like calming the ripples on the surface of water, and then you can certainly see your face in it. But as long as there are ripples, they prevent you from seeing yourself. So the mind has to be stilled. The ego has to be killed, in other words. And this is obviously not a physical killing. The ego must cease. The ripples of thought on the surface of the mind must cease in order for the mind to see itself in its own mirror. And then it'll recognize that it is really of the self. So the Guru assures us, he says, look, Kachi matki binas binasa. The body is like a half-baked earthen pot. Kachi matki. It is sure to crumble one day. Binas binasa. It is perishable. But if you transcend the physical senses, just shoot a trikuti. Trikuti, the three modes of reality that we live in, that we exist in. Trikuti. It has these three qualities that together make life as we know it possible. Physical life. They are the three gunas, if you will, sattva, rajas, and tamas, that create this dynamic balance to ensure life, physical life. So just shute trikuti. So obviously, shute, to give up, doesn't mean to give up physically, but it means to transcend it psychologically. This is psychological transcendence. You can't just, kill your body. So what it means here is to psychologically remove yourself, to keep a distance. Because the nature of the ego self, ucha chade so pave payal, ucha chade, it can attain great heights, fame, reputation, what have you. But pave payala, because it lives in the world of opposites, it will eventually fall to its lowest depths. Because it's constantly undulating between opposites. So if it climbs high, it's sure to come down. But you can escape this fate if you remain grounded in the self. Taran literally means to lie on the ground, which means to remain humble, which means not to be egocentric. This is lage na kala. Kala, death, time, the tyranny of death. You escape that. Paramat phire tin kishu na paya, so asthir jin gur sabd kamaya. Again, the emphasis is on gur wisdom. Wandering around in search of the self, which many, many people do, in search of the self, the Guru says it is not going to achieve anything. After all, the self is resident within you. So you don't need to go anywhere. This is obviously aimed at wandering ascetics and wandering sadhus and sects that don't stay in one place. The Guru says that is not going to achieve anything. What you really need is to be grounded in Guru wisdom. So this is a psychological process that we are talking about. Jio pind sab har ka mal. In conclusion, the body, the spirit within, the being, the jiva, they are all possessions of the har self, because there is nothing else. There's only the herself. Nanak gur mil bhai nihal. So Nanak found fulfillment through good wisdom. And that is what we should be doing, is following suit. On that note, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.